up, artists and movers? It's me, Gaylyn Lareese, and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another DIY video. This is the second part in my home office makeover series where I'm turning the second bedroom in my 2-bedroom apartment into a separate workspace. Having a separate workspace away from your bedroom can be really good so that you can have some work-life balance, especially if you're creative or if you work from home. But the office has to be cute, right? In my last DIY video, I created some giant geometric art that actually turned out really good and was really easy to do, and I made an accent wooden wall piece to go on the wall behind the desk to kind of create a focal point in the office. And today I'm going to be doing 2 DIY projects. The first is a concrete planter that I'm going to use to bring in some greenery into the space using either a plant or a tree, and it's not going to require a mold. And the second is going to be a really simple IKEA hack that I did using IKEA's most inexpensive desk model to give it more tabletop space and make it a little bit more functional. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, especially if you want to keep up to date on these different home office makeovers, and go ahead and give this video a like. It really helps out my channel. So once you've done both of those things, then let's jump into this video. So in my home office, as well as in the rest of my apartment, I've decided to go with a modern rustic interior design style. Modern rustic spaces combine the clean lines and simplicity of a modern space with the textures and hues and tones of nature that you would find in a rustic space. And also in a rustic space, you may often see woods and stones mixed together to kind of just make the room feel more earthy and grounded. And so I'm going to be making a concrete planter to bring some of those stones into this space. And I wanted to be able to do it without using a mold because I don't have the time or the funds or the know-how, if I'm being honest, to make a unique mold to create a concrete planter. I wanted this to be easy and basic. To start off, I wanted to combine the shape of this planter with the look of this one. I just loved how weathered it looked. It didn't look so perfect and was really gonna bring some texture into the room to really contrast against those clean shapes that are in my geometric painting. I found this flower foam dome at Michael's for flower arranging that was in a 12-inch diameter, and at Lowe's I found this cardboard tubing with the same dimensions. This will create the framing shape for the planter, and of course when I was there I picked up some cement from the same aisle. I'm starting off by using a turkey carver to cut the base of the foam so that it sits flat on the floor. Fun fact, cosplayers actually use electric turkey carvers to cut foam all the time to make their costumes. So it's actually a really good little tool to keep in your craft kit because it makes really, really clean cuts. Then I'm cutting the height that I want from the cardboard tubing with a box cutter. Next, I'm giving the yellow cardboard a coat of white paint just so that all of the base is the same color under the concrete. Now, I do want an actual plant and its grow bag to be able to sit inside of this planter, so I'm cutting a circle out of some scrap cardboard to place between the tubing and the dome so that it makes a stable base for the plant to sit. This is why I always keep any cardboard that I get from packaging because you never know when you're going to need it for a project. I started by first following the directions by doing a 4:1 part ratio of the powder and water, but honestly after I started getting familiar with it, I just kind of started eyeballing it because I knew what thickness I wanted of the cement. I'm starting with the circle base just to get a hang of how the cement spreads, and then I'm covering the dome shape as well and made sure to spread it around its curves. I also found that taking a bit of water on your fingertips and kind of using it to smooth out any lumps helped to keep the domey shape. After the pieces have dried, I'm going with some Fuse It adhesive, which is my favorite strong adhesive, to connect them all into the final base shape. And once it's all connected, I'm spreading the cement onto the tubing to cover it and fill any cracks where the pieces join together. So at this point, I was like, wow, okay, this is really kind of coming together. sure, but I didn't like the unfinished look of the rim on the planter. So I went ahead and took some foam and glued it on the inside edge and then covered that with cement to give it more of a realistic look. And now it was time to stain. It's actually kind of difficult to find cement stain in smaller packaging, but I was able to find some small bottles on Amazon, so I will link those down below, and that is what I used for this project. First, I tested them out on some scrap pieces of cardboard and cement that I had created, just to see what the colors were looking like and how the acid reaction would act to the cement. And it's a good thing that I did because the colors were a little bit off. I just did some testers on this like little test sheet of cement that I did on some cardboard, and I'm hating these. So this one is the color coffee, and this one is supposed to be amber, but it's not giving amber at all. This one I tested them just putting on the dry stain, and this one I put water first to see what that looks like. But I read that you need to let it sit overnight. So I'm gonna let these sit overnight and see what they look like in the morning. But if I hate it, then I'm gonna have to, because this was supposed to be like a darker color. So this is the next day, and this is how the little test strips look. So this one was the one with no water, and this one was the one with water. Not the colors I was expecting at all. I ended up having to go back and order another color, which was ebony, and so I ended up using ebony and coffee to create the stain. I decided I would do a diluted mix of ebony and water first to cover the entire planter. And then I went back with the sponge, just with the stain on it, to create more rich shades of brown on top of it. So this took some time, and it really just took playing around with the stains to really see how the colors developed over time. I really wanted some really deep brown parts and some parts that were more of a lighter toned brown. And since this is an acid stain, you have to neutralize it. So to neutralize it, I simply used a mix of water and baking soda, and this is the final look. I think this turned out so good. It looks good against the wood floor, although I probably am gonna put a rug in this room, but it just brings some earthiness to the space, creates some textures, and just helps everything not look so pretty. You know what I'm saying? I want to bring some rustic, stony feels, and that's definitely what this did. But I'm kind of not sure what kind of plant I want to get. So for the time being, I just put my faux bamboo plant in there to see what it would look like. But I want to get you guys' opinion. Should I get an olive tree, or should I get a ficus tree? I want to get a big girl, like a real tree. You know, I think I'm ready to take care of a real tree, but I'm not sure which one. So go ahead and comment down below olive or ficus to let me know which one you think I should get for this room. So the next thing to tackle was this IKEA desk. Now, this IKEA hack is actually going to take two separate DIYs in one. Let's first start with the one that helps to just look more aesthetic and fit into the space that I'm trying to create. This is the desk model that we'll be working with from IKEA, and I got it for $30 with the chair off of Facebook Marketplace like 2 years ago. But I love the simplicity of it, and it really reminded me of some of the clean shapes and lines that I often see in other modern spaces. So I knew I could make it work. To start off, I'm cleaning the desk of any dirt, and then I'm giving it a light sanding using a 60 grit sandpaper so that the spray paint will stick well to the metal. I'm also removing the little ledge under the desk so that the metal sides will be much easier to spray paint. Okay, cool. That was easy. I ordered this little spray paint gun attachment for spray paint bottles, and I'm glad I did because it made it a lot easier for my hands to spray paint for long periods of time. But I will say, over time, it still started to get a little bit splotchy with the actual spraying of the paint. So take from that what you will. I'll have it linked down below in case you guys want to grab it. And of course, if I tell you nothing else about spray painting, it is always better to do thin coats instead of doing one heavy solid coat, because you then run the risk of it dripping. I'm starting off by spraying it with a taupe colored primer first to cover this black color before following up with 2 coats of the actual hammered copper color. The hammered copper spray paint says it's both a paint and a primer, so you don't have to use a primer. However, using a primer allowed me to use less of the actual copper color. That way I had more spray paint left over for other projects. So the desk had a new coat of paint and I already thought it was looking fabulous, but I really hated this little ledge faux wood thing that came with it. It just wasn't going with my color scheme, so I wanted to take that out, and we'll do something with that in a second. But first, I noticed, and I don't know if you can see on camera, but it wasn't really shining and picking up light inside like it was when I was outside. So I'm taking some rub and buff in the colors Antique Gold and Spanish Copper, and I'm buffing it in on top of the spray paint to add even more shine and depth. Rub and buff is like a mix of these different shiny waxes, and it's honestly a little bit hard to work with in the beginning if you've never worked with something like this before, but I did find that it gave way better of a shine than just the spray paint alone. Now it's time to make this desk more functional. So recently when I went thrifting, I actually found this beautiful brass desk lamp, and I knew it was going to look great in the space, but I also knew that it was going to take up space on this desk. Having a lamp that already has a base of like 6 inches in diameter was going to take up space once you actually add the laptop and my notepad and my external hard drives, and so I knew I was going to have to extend this desk. Instead of replacing this ugly plastic wood piece, I'm actually going to create a longer piece of wood to go in its place that's going to give me a little bit more tabletop space. I ended up just combining 2 scrap pieces of wood, and I would not recommend doing that. I mean, it worked out fine. It definitely worked out fine, but it's just much easier to have one full piece of wood so that you don't have to worry about it bending under the weight of anything that you put on it. After cutting my scrap pieces of wood down to size using a simple handsaw, I'm using my favorite Gorilla Wood glue to connect both of the edges, and then I'm setting them to dry with clamps so that they dry completely straight. I wasn't able to clamp both sides, obviously because the other side was on the table. So I ended up just using the Cementol and this jug of laundry detergent to weigh it down, and now I just wait for it to dry. After combining the pieces, it's time to cover them in fabric that matches my aesthetic. So modern rustic rooms usually look really good with leathers in the space, and so I actually found this perfect colored piece of faux leather at Joann's Fabrics to use for this desk. I'm also gonna use it to reupholster an office chair. So I wanna make a unique office chair out of a thrifted desk chair for this room, and I feel like this fabric is gonna look really good on it. So if you wanna see that video, make sure you're subscribed so you can see that project, because that's definitely coming up in this makeover. To cover it, I'm simply pulling and stapling around all of the edges. And once it's stapled, I'm going in with some Gorilla Hot Glue to secure the fabric down. And I simply screwed it in place of the other piece of wood with the original screws. Now it was time to create even more extra space by taking some of the things that I usually keep on my desk off of it. One of those things is my to-do list. So if you follow me on Instagram, I don't post often. I don't post often, but I do post in my stories. And in my stories, I share with you guys when I do my weekly to-do list. And that's something that I've incorporated into my workflow about 1.5 years ago that really helps me stay on task throughout the week. And I like having it accessible on my desk and around my workspace. But I don't want to keep putting it on my desk because it is taking up a lot of room. So I'm going to create a to-do list holder so that I can hang it up in front of me and still be able to take it down easily and and check things off, but also take it off of the desk. I'm starting with this gray wood-toned 11 by 14 inch shadow box, and I'm beginning by simply removing the back so that the pretty background fabric is exposed, and luckily the glass easily comes out of the front of the frame. Once the fabric covered piece is removed, I took a sheet of paper that was already hole punched and simply marked where the holes would need to be for my weekly to-do list. Next, I'm taking these little brass screw hooks and I'm actually spray painting them the color that I used on the desk so that it kind of goes with the aesthetic of the room. I'm also going to spray paint these clamps that I'm going to use to attach the shadow box to the desk. While the hooks are drying, I cut a piece of scrap cardboard to fit the shadow box so that the screws wouldn't poke out the back of the frame, and once the screw hooks are dry, I'm simply screwing them into place and reassembling the shadow box. And once the shadow box is reassembled, it's time to attach the screw clamps. I'm starting off by using a 1/16 inch drill bit to drill 2 holes in the bottom of the shadow box. Then I'm using some screws I had laying around and I'm screwing the clamp into place. Once I had the drilled holes, it was hard to actually use the screwdriver to screw the screw into place because of the shape of the clamp. It's just hard to get it in there. So I ended up using some pliers to just squeeze it from the sides and screw it into place. And to attach it to the desk, I just slid it over the edge and used the screws on the clamps to lock it in place. And this is the final look. You guys, I am really happy with how both of these DIYs came out. The planter just adds a bit of texture and earthiness to the room, which it definitely needed, and I was able to do it without making a mold, so I'm pretty proud of myself for that. And with my IKEA desk, I was able to use what I already had, but made it work for the workspace that I have now. So now it can actually fit my laptop and external hard drives and pens and my phone and of course my to-do list, which is now still visible and still in front of me, but isn't in the way. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video in this DIY series where I tackle some renter-friendly lighting options, and we might just finish this room all together. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like. It really helps my channel, it helps get this video seen more, and it helps me find other people who love DIYs just as much as I do. I'll see you guys in my next video next weekend. Later.